Are things with proven or supposed pagan origins, such as wedding rings or birthday candles, to be avoided according to Scripture, or are they able to be redeemed? Well, it depends. So I think what we have to do is add layers of nuance onto this issue about pagan things. So wedding rings, I don't know if that wedding rings or birthday candles actually have pagan origins, but not to my knowledge. And I've looked into that a little bit, but didn't find anything. But what we have to distinguish is between something a pagan did and something that is pagan. So for instance, pagans throughout the world have been feeding their children for years, before Christianity even was around. So is feeding your children pagan? No, obviously not, right? Obviously not, because that was something pagans did, but it wasn't something that was pagan. So the question is if the practice has connotations that are ungodly and doctrinally false. And if the practice does, we don't want to do it. But if the practice is just a thing that pagans did that isn't inherently pagan, then do it all you want. It doesn't matter. Now, this even gets perhaps a little more flexible, because when we look at the Old Testament, we see things like the use of circumcision in Israel. So in the ancient Near East, there were other cultures that used circumcision for various reasons. But God takes circumcision and he gives it to Israel as something for all the men of Israel, and something to symbolize, I think, some really interesting and neat things. There's a cutting off or of a removal of the flesh, which in the New Testament times symbolizes sin. So it's about being, and it talks about having circumcised hearts. Like that's the idea, is I'm putting off my carnal desires. It's intimate. You might say it's kind of gross, but that's the whole idea, is it's sort of visceral of like this, the picture of what it means. But there's a very biblical and Christian and Jewish meaning to circumcision that is different than whatever it meant to the cultures around it. So here's a practice that was shared by pagans and shared by Israel, which is itself a very Jewish practice. It's not pagan because of what it means to them. Then there's so like, for instance, like if you say, well, there's Christmas trees are pagan because the people of the past would bring trees into their homes and celebrate Asherah or whatever lies you've heard on the internet on this stuff. My thought is, even if that was true, the tree in a Christmas celebration for a Christian doesn't have any of those connotations to it. And so I look at it and I go, I'm not worried about this. Now, on the other hand, let's say that you worship, this false god by killing your children. And then over here, you're thinking, well, I know it was pagan, but now it's Christian. I'm going to kill my Obviously, there's a problem there. What I'm suggesting here is the word pagan is too broad of a term to just throw on practices everywhere and tell people they can't do them. What we need to do is look at the practice and ask things like, is it pagan in its nature and in its practice, not just in its past association? We have to ask things like, is it something that is ultimately honoring to Christ? Is it something that connects to doctrinal things that are good or doctrinal things that are bad? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Does it cause confusion culturally between the difference between Christianity and, say, some other religious group? Is it creating a bridge? Here's another one. Is it creating a bridge between Christians and, say, New Age practices? That's a bad thing. That's a health issue, health and safety issue. Like, this is a gateway to other things that are causing problems. So I think we have to have wisdom and insight and be kind of very adult and thoughtful about how we work through those issues. I don't see any problem with wedding rings or birthday candles in any way, personally.